Tampa Bay is like no place else.
Wait, you can't recycle the bag. You have to throw it away.
Proper recycling keeps it that way for everyone. Bags tangle in machinery and can bring sorting efforts to a halt.
No bags.
Trash the bags and keep our recycling program moving forward.
No, Mom, look. No plastic bags.
Do your part to keep our recycling bag-free. Trash the tanglers or return them to participating retailers. For more information, visit tampabayrecycles.org.
Flossing in the morning is a really great way to keep your teeth healthy and start the day. But when you're through, here's what you do. Throw it in the trash, don't flush it. There's a problem lots of people don't know, called sanitary sewer overflow. A condition buried deep in the ground, inside a pipe where bad clogs are found. It's a problem we can all help solve. So throw it in the trash, don't flush it. Baby wipes, bandages, cotton pads, paper towels, dental floss, clog up bad. Medicines, kitty litter, cotton swabs, hair. Throw them in the trash, don't flush it. It just takes a second to do the right thing. So toss it and let's keep our pipes clean. Throw it in the trash, don't flush it. If it's not toilet paper, don't flush it. Even if it says you can, don't flush it. If you're having any doubts, don't flush it. One more time, don't flush it.
This is Dave. Dave doesn't know his home's flood zone and was not able to heed flood warnings. Dave and his home are soaked. This is Noah. Noah is an informed citizen. He was warned in advance about potential flooding in his area. Noah took precautions. Noah is dry.
And I saved the animals too.
Good job, Noah. When it comes to flood warnings, be like Noah, not like Dave. For more information, visit hcfl.gov.net. Be safe, be informed, know your flood zone.
Oh man, here comes Arnie again.
Check this out.
What's up, Arnie?
What are you doing? You made a mess in my hallway.
Welcome to a meeting of your Planning Commission, the official local planning agency for the cities of Tampa, Temple Terrace, Plant City, and unincorporated Hillsborough County. The Planning Commission provides innovative leadership and long-range vision that contributes to the creation of a thriving, prosperous community that offers opportunity, fairness, and choice in how we live, move, learn, work, and play. For more information about the Planning Commission, please call 813-272-5940. Follow us on social media or visit our website at planhillsborough.org.
Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to the March 11th, 2019 regular meeting of the Hillsborough City-County Planning Commission. We thank you for attending this meeting. Your comments and participation are encouraged. Please sign the register at the rear of the room and turn off any devices that may be a distraction. If you wish to address the commission on any particular item, we ask that you please complete the appropriate public comment sign-in sheet at the back of the room. When addressing the commission, please state your name, address, and speak directly into the microphone. For those of you who are not familiar with our process, the meeting will be conducted as follows. The agenda item will be introduced. Staff will give their presentation with a 15-minute time limit. The applicant will be given the opportunity to make a presentation with a 15-minute time limit. Following presentations, members of the public may address the commission when recognized by the chairman. Public comment will be heard for 3 minutes per person. The applicant will be afforded a 3-minute period for rebuttal or response. Planning commissioners will ask questions. Public comment will be closed. Then upon a motion, second, and discussion, a vote will be taken. With that introduction, I'll ask Commissioner Powell to lead us in the prayer and pledge of allegiance. All rise.
Heavenly Father, we come before you today with praise for your mighty power and guidance. We thank you for this day, and thank you for the many blessings in our lives, for our great country, and for the opportunity to live in freedom. We ask your blessings on our leaders, We ask that you give each one of us here today the wisdom to make the right choices so that our decisions will be in the best interest of the people of Hillsborough County. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Commissioner Powell. Roll call, please.
Good afternoon, Powell. Here. Dix. Here. Green. Here. Joseph. Here. Kress. Here. Marina. Here. Willman. Here. Thrower.
Here.
Wilds.
Here.
Dickerson. Rodriguez.
Here.
Dowdy.
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Next up is approval of the minutes for the regular Planning Commission meeting on January 14th and the City of Tampa Plan Amendment public hearing on February 11th, 2019. Any discussion? Anyone like to make a motion for approval as stated, as written? Motion by Commissioner Green, second by Commissioner Wilds. Any further discussion before we vote? All in favor of the minutes as written, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Now we are moving on to public input. Is there anyone from the audience who'd like to speak on any items that are not on our agenda today? Okay. Any items that are not on our agenda today? Okay. No public comment. We'll move on to number 3, evaluation of the executive director, and I'm going to hand it over to Tracy Robin.
Good afternoon, everybody. For those of you who haven't been through this before, this is the time of year that you complete an evaluation of your executive director. And I have sent out to you and by mail a copy of the evaluation report that the board has previously adopted. I hope you brought it with you today. If you're not, let me know. I brought a couple extra copies with me. You need one? And I'll ask you to complete those at this time, and I'll come around and collect them. Please be sure to put your name on it and initial every page for me, please. We will then, at the end of the meeting, staff's going to put together an index of consensus. That's a consensus on how close each of you are on the various items to each other, or how far apart you are in terms of your judgment about the performance in that particular area. And we'll pass that consensus out at the end of the meeting to be discussed probably at next month's meeting. So I'll collect those when they're ready.
Okay, thank you. We are going to move on to item number 4 on the agenda, and our executive director is going to present it. Or introduce.
Yes. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Melissa Zornita, Executive Director. This afternoon, we are joined by 2 students from the Florida State University Department of Urban and Regional Planning. They are working on a project entitled Shared Mobility Design and Policy, and this is a capstone studio for the students, and they are doing that in collaboration with us and the Florida Department of Transportation. And they'll explain exactly what they're looking at, but they're looking at how things like automated vehicles and shared vehicles might impact our design of our built environment. So not necessarily how they're what you think of how much are they going to be used, that sort of thing, but the side of it from a land use side and urban design, how's that going to change the utilization of land? So with that, I'll turn it over to Dara first. Okay, great.
Hello, my name is Dara Osher. I am the student project manager for the Capstone Studio project. Myself and Jairus Barbie will be presenting to you today. So just to get started, again, urban design for shared mobility. And generally what I will be discussing today, we'll be discussing today is an introduction to our project, overview of some of the key points from our literature review, some discussion on the 4 context areas that we'll be covering within Hillsborough County and the city of Tampa. And then a bit of a catch up on the design workshops that we conducted in Hillsborough County on March 7th and 8th, one of which was in the lobby of this building. All right, so just to start out, what is shared mobility? Some have described shared mobility as a transportation mode that is low speed and motorized and will generally bring people to areas that are within a shorter distance. However, we have decided to define shared mobility as any transportation mode that can be shared. And so that can be public transit, whether that's fixed route or flexible route service, car share like Zipcar, bike share such as the Coast Bike Share program that you have here in Hillsborough County, scooter share, it could be carpooling, car sharing, also Uber and Lyft or ride hailing. So any of the transportation network companies as well. And so that's just a general introduction to basically what we're looking at and how that impacts the built environment, both from a policy standpoint and then also from an urban design standpoint. So our process included task 1, which was a literature review, task 2, which is a plan review, and those both, that kind of midterm report is due March 22nd. We will be defending it to our student advisory committee this Wednesday at Florida State University. After that, we will be focusing on conceptual designs. Part of that has included community engagement, meetings such as addressing the MPO subcommittees. We have presented to the Citizens Advisory Committee and the Bike Ped Advisory Committee and also the Transportation Disadvantaged Committee. Part of those meetings has been to collect preference surveys. It's an exercise that the MPO subcommittees have really enjoyed. I do have some copies of these visual preference surveys. Should anyone like to have a copy or to fill one out, I'm sure Melissa can help, or we have them that we can leave here as well, and I'm sure they can get back to us in some way. And then lastly, we also have design workshops, which I will discuss later in the presentation, but they went really well, and we had a really wonderful time getting public input on those. And then lastly, we'll have policy recommendations, and this final report on the student side will be completed by May 3rd. And then Dennis Smith and Jeremy Crute, who are the planner in residence and senior planner for the Florida Planning and Development Lab with FSU's studio, they will be submitting the final report to you all towards the end or towards the beginning of October, excuse me. So getting into the literature review key points, one of the things that I'd like to start with stating in terms of setting the context is that this trend towards shared mobility is something that's not solely unique to the United States. It's something that's happening worldwide, from China to Africa to Europe, Dublin, Helsinki, Spain. We're seeing the growing demand and trend towards shared mobility happening worldwide, which is why it's so important that we're beginning to tackle and think through how this increasing demand will affect our built environment and starting to plan for that now. So generally speaking, consumers, and particularly younger consumers, are starting to want more flexible, on-demand, convenient, and affordable forms of transportation, primarily that they can access through their smartphone apps and call a car or or access a bike share, or any form of shared mobility when they want to, according to their needs and demands.
All right, so she's going to switch it over to me. I'm going to cover a few topics of our literature review. So I'm going to begin with the role of government. So, Jairus Barbie, for the record, Florida State University. So I'm going to start a little bit with the key points from the role of government. So through our literature review, we recognize that many cities are looking to harness the opportunities and potential that AV represents and presents to mitigate those potential concerns of ensuring the sustainable development of people-oriented places. The mechanisms in which they're generally regulated are through economic things like taxes and subsidies, regulatory frameworks like Land Development Code, laying out how the land will be utilized at the ground level, and planning instruments such as zoning and overlay districts to facilitate those modes of mobility within localized areas or however that local government or jurisdiction sees fit. So those regulatory instruments lay out a process in which these local jurisdictions can direct economic development to areas in which have previously seen disinvestment or do not currently have the opportunity to harness just transit or single occupancy vehicles. We're trying to move away from those single occupancy vehicles and promote usage by all all members of society, and try to provide a mode for each and every person to fit their localized needs. The most untapped potential that is seen for this shared mobility is in our urban downtowns, small city downtowns in the exurbs, moderately dense neighborhoods that are on the outer downtown core. These neighborhoods are usually near transit or transit access. The inner-ring suburbs that have quick and easy access to either arterial networks or other modes of transportation, such as transit, and densely populated low-income neighborhoods, which could see the most immediate benefit to link those residents to areas which give them economic potential. Some things of technological innovation. So many transportation leaders and policymakers are looking to work together to integrate this efficient facilitation of autonomous vehicles along with shared mobility such as the ride-hail, such as Uber and Lyft, scooter share, and the bike networks to excuse me, to form a fully integrated network that supports all of these modes. And one of the main things that they are doing is allowing transit-friendly curb allocations and land use regulations, which provide for pickup and drop-off areas and allow the efficient use of this curb space. And to increase the transportation service and accessibility, these could be integrated to serve the most people in these dense neighborhoods.
Once again, Dara Osher. And so an important issue with really any form of mobility is equity. We feel very strongly about incorporating equity into our project, and so we find that shared mobility has the ability to improve safety and mobility for people, However, due to the potential cost inhibitors of particularly ride-hail, potentially it can also further disadvantage those who are already underserved by existing transit or transportation options, especially for those who maybe don't have access to a vehicle. And so to create a more equitable form of shared mobility, we don't want shared mobility, and particularly ride-hail, Uber, and Lyft, to take away ridership from transit. We want it to complement public transit. And so we feel very passionately about doing what we can in terms of making sure that our project is complementary and not competing with transit. From a health and safety perspective, we want to make sure that transportation becomes more about people and less about vehicles, and particularly the movement of vehicles. We want to make sure that people can improve their standard of living by having access to healthcare, and this is particularly important for the concept of aging in place, particularly for older individuals who later in life might not be able to drive their vehicles anymore, especially in suburban areas. Shared mobility can really create the opportunity for people to access healthcare and go to doctor's visits, and that also can contribute to mental health and emotional well-being, because it's shown that people who are 65 and older tend to drop off in terms of having access to their social networks. And so in terms of promoting social cohesion, we think that shared mobility can really help with that. There's also a possibility to decrease traffic fatality rates by slowing traffic down in certain areas where shared mobility and bike share is utilized. And so particularly ride-hail and Uber and Lyft is important from a safety perspective, in that it's easy for someone who maybe is partying too much or went to Ybor and they can't drive anymore. They can just call an Uber or Lyft to bring them home instead of taking the risk of driving under the influence. In terms of sustainability in the environment, the more people that are sharing transportation modes and not being a single individual in a vehicle, that can contribute to lowering total vehicle miles traveled, decreasing greenhouse gas emissions, especially as we see the possibility for shared mobility to transition more towards electric vehicles, and then also autonomous transit and autonomous vehicles in the future, which is also an aspect of our project that I failed to mention earlier. I apologize. And so by improving greenhouse gas emissions, you can also improve air quality and then reduce fuel consumption, which is really important in the United States, where we have a large issue with oil dependence, particularly on foreign entities for oil. And then the bike share service model, and also flexible transit and shared ride-hail as a form of shared mobility, can also be beneficial in terms of connecting to local transit nodes and solving some of those first and last mile transportation connections that might be able to facilitate more transit use and therefore reduce single occupancy vehicle travel. And then, so this brings us to design. And so to clarify, our urban design aspects of shared mobility is really to focus on pickup and drop-off points, waiting areas or liveries, parking for ride-hail, also electric vehicle or charging stations, and then the integration of transit within that network as well. And so we will make sure that each context area, which is slightly different, and I'll get into it momentarily, is context dependent and context sensitive, that it's universal, that it should be good for someone from 8 years old to 80-year-olds in terms of safety and accessibility, and that our designs can be flexible and adaptable to technological innovations that are happening now and will continue to happen, and then to focus on being people-based and outcomes, and approaching it from an outcomes and people-based perspective. Yes. And so that brings us to the culmination of our literature review, which has been boiled down to 5 principles of design. As I've mentioned before, we have universal design. So if the built environment can be good for someone from 8 years old to 80-year-olds, while also including individuals who might be transportation disadvantaged or disabled, then it's probably safe and accessible enough for everyone in between. In terms of aesthetics, we want it to look beautiful and be pleasing and want to be a place that people want to walk around and bike around, but also be something that can contribute to the economy. We want it to be accessible in terms of improving proximity and convenience in terms of accessing destinations. After all, transportation, we don't all drive for the sake of driving for the most part. We drive to get places that we need to go. We want it to be adaptable, to be flexible, on-demand transportation. If we want that from our transportation network, then our design should also try to accommodate flexibility and demand responsive, for example, through sleek and efficient utilization of pickup and drop-off zones. And then also technological accommodation, considering the curbside public transit space and built environment changes that can accommodate shared mobility, autonomous vehicle alternatives, and in a way that maintains, augments, and facilitates transit ridership especially. And so to go into our context area discussion, this is a map of the 4 context areas, 2 of which are in unincorporated Hillsborough County. To the northwest, we have Keystone Civic Center and Citrus Park Mall. And then within the downtown area, we have West River Redevelopment Area, and then Amelie Arena and Water Street. So, I mean, I know that you guys all know what these look like, but just to show our boundaries, they've shifted slightly, but to give you an idea of what we're looking at. So Amelie Arena, Westfield Citrus Park, the Keystone Park Civic Center. We've actually expanded this to include the public library there as well, which you'll see in a moment. And then West River Redevelopment Area, and we've kind of shifted south a little bit here. And so focusing on our design workshops, we had one on Thursday, March 7th from 4 to 7 p.m. at the Maureen B. Gaza Public Library Conference Room. We had at least 20 participants, which was really good, we believe, considering the location of the workshop, and got a really wonderful array of public input and feedback. And then March 8th, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., we had in the county center, where I believe we had at least 40 people come. So it was a really wonderful turnout, and we got really good feedback from many of the MPO employees in particular. And so I'm going to show you now some of the design slides that we created to help guide and facilitate public input. However, please note that these are not final at all. These are just some of our preliminary ideas to guide individuals. And so this was a visual design legend that we created to go with each context area. So trying to give an idea of what each legend item would look like potentially on the ground by using Tampa-specific items. So we have the ride-hail waiting area, which would be kind of like a cell phone lot, a covered pedestrian waiting area, which is where people would wait for their ride-hail or Uber or Lyft to come and pick them up in a space that's well lit, has pathways, has landscaping, has seating, and is accessible for everyone. We have loading and unloading flex zones that could possibly be micro distribution centers. ADA parking, pickup and drop off was really important. Ride hail pickup drop off circulators. We wanted to identify existing bike share and then also additional bike share, places where electric vehicles could be charged, and then ride hail pickup and drop off locations, as well as identifying existing bus and trolley stops as they related to each context. So this is what we showed the public to kind of get some ideas moving. Additionally, each context area had a blank map on which participants and attendees could write and draw and leave comments and kind of facilitate some of their own ideas. We didn't want to come empty-handed, feeling like perhaps people would not know exactly what we were talking about. And so we created some ideas here. I know specifically for Amelie, this area is going to change drastically with the new Water Street Tampa designs. And we most definitely intend to accommodate that when we produce our final conceptual designs. In terms of Citrus Park Mall, again, trying to pay attention to ride hail waiting areas, the integration of bus stops, Uber, flex zones, and covered pedestrian areas. And we got a lot of really good input on these. We have Keystone Park, which includes also the public library. There's also going to be a lot of change to the Keystone Park area, and we had a number of individuals from the Keystone Civic Association come and give their input. And then lastly, we have the West River redevelopment area, which was a little further south than what the initial map showed. We also know that this area is going to change dramatically as well. And so this sums up our design workshops and our project up to this point. There will be individuals returning to further present the project to you. We thank you very much for your time, and we're very honored to be able to come from Tallahassee today to speak with you. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Green?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. But you knew I was going to press that button, right? Thank you, Dara. Well, first of all, thank you, and is it Jairus? Thank you for driving down. I'm assuming you drove down, but thank you for driving down to Tampa to make this presentation. And thank you for the work that you're doing. We think this is really, really important. And I'm glad we're looking at these implications of shared mobility and automated vehicle technology, particularly for the Tampa area, let's say. I was, as you were speaking, I was just jotting down a few just general notes because I'm not sure. I hadn't heard about the scope of your studio, but I just have a couple of general questions I wanted to ask you. It seems like most of the focus for all of the. Can you go back a slide with your? Well, this one should work. So all the areas that you're identifying for as waiting areas or pickup areas, drop-off areas. Now, are they all in the public sector, or are you guys actually going to be assuming that some of these could exist on private property, or for that matter, as part of some new development? Are you making any assumptions along those lines?
Well, I guess, so in terms of the scope of our designs, they're really meant to be conceptual, and so how it actually plays out in the actual communities on the ground, I think is something that we will do our best to provide policy recommendations to that degree. But because they're more conceptual designs, I think it's more so up to the client to decide how that should play out in real life. But they could be public or private sector. It really depends on what works best for each community.
Okay. Well, the reason I ask, of course, is because once you get to that point where you're making policy recommendations, they're going to affect both the public sector as well as the private sector conditions, let's say, out there on the ground. But I just wanted to know if again, most of what you're envisioning would happen within the right-of-way, the existing rights-of-way, or whatever. That's the other piece of this that we've been exploring or debating here at USF, rather. How should the public rights-of-way actually change to accommodate much of what you're describing? Okay, and that, of course, gets into physical design as well. So. But I think this is a good study. I look forward to you coming back with your final. I don't know. Will you make recommendations, or are you just going to present us with your conceptual ideas?
So there'll be 4 conceptual designs. We have 4 planned for each context area specific to Hillsborough County, and then 4 also for Tallahassee for the FDOT Transit Office, and then. The final report will also include some policy recommendations. past May 3rd, most of our studio, which this is only a third of us, most of us are graduating. So
Okay,
it'll
so
be.
you're handing it off to.
We are
the
handing
group,
it off
so-
to some extent. So I believe the summer studio for Florida State will work on it to some extent, but it'll really be up to our planner in residence and senior planner, Dennis Smith and Jeremy Crute, respectively, to wrap up the final report for the project and return for a final presentation.
Okay, good. I just only have one suggestion
yeah.
for you guys who are students. Whatever you're putting into this, be bold.
Yes. Thank
Okay?
you.
All right?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll take that home with me. Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Joseph?
Thank you. I just had one question on what drives the selection of the context, the Citrus, the Keystone, the West River, the Emily. You may have mentioned it, but I think I may have missed it. What caused the selection of those areas in particular?
So the selection of the context areas was a joint discussion between our group and also the MPO. So we wanted to make sure that we chose a suburban shopping mall, a rural destination, a downtown area of some sort, and then also an urban downtown, an urban stadium. And so we have similar 4 context areas selected for Tallahassee, but they were really chosen in collaboration with the MPO.
I have one more question.
Absolutely.
On the curb allocations, how, obviously this is conceptual, but what are you seeing with implications for infrastructure when it comes to curb allocations and things like that? Or is AV going to cause some sort of need for more space at the curb, or have you thought in those directions or anything like that? Can you speak on those sorts of things?
Yeah. So I think that we're really still in the process of exploring those in terms of how it'll impact curbside, especially. There's been a lot of discussion with the rise of shared mobility in terms of flexible zones that could change throughout the day depending on peak hours, peak AM, peak PM, and then also facilitating and accommodating freight, because that's really important as well. And so once we have the opportunity to go through and analyze our public feedback, we will be incorporating that into our design recommendations as well. But our goal is to make our conceptual designs as cost effective as possible. So if we can create ideas and facilitate designs that operate within the existing built environment, we plan to do that to the best of our ability.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Marino?
If you could back up to the downtown or the Emily slide, I guess my question is how much, or have you interacted with the folks at Water Street? Just because the thing that stands out to me most about this is the flex zone is the players' parking lot right now, and the pedestrian waiting area is going to be a hotel. So, and right on the south side of that image is where the streetcar runs in front on Old Water Street. So I guess my question, how conceptual is this? Because those two just kind of pop up as not even being possible probably within the next year and a half, 2 years.
Yes, so we recognize that. We know that this design is not by any means final or even really an honest or true representation of what our conceptual designs will look like. These satellite images were the most recent images that we could get to facilitate a GIS analysis and create an overlay with some of our ideas. And at this point, this one in particular will probably drastically change. And it was mostly to show to the public to facilitate feedback and to give kind of a general idea of what we're hoping to conceptualize with shared mobility. But we are very aware that there's a lot of change and that's happening in this particular area. And in our plan review, we have incorporated that and thought through particularly the Water Street master plan. And we are aware that this is not at all a final product and will change considerably. Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Powell?
Thank you, Commissioner. In part of your presentation, you mentioned that you're trying to design something that can be used from anyone from 8 years old to 80 years old. And that made my stomach turn because I have little children, thinking that maybe an 8 or 9 year old was actually going to be requesting an Uber or some sort of, public transportation one day. And what type of, in these, pedestrian waiting areas is there any thought to any design for like safety features of, if there are children that are going to be using these public modes of transportation and services, are there designated areas that are going to be like, I wouldn't say like a safe zone for them, but like designated spots where, hey, this is where, they're going to go for, for picking up an Uber or something of that nature. I don't know if that's a part of your thought process or has even ever been brought up. I don't know if that would be fall even under your responsibilities, or that would be more county or police. But obviously, as our world continues to change and people are going to move around in different ways, to me, for someone, that's something that's really like important. I just wanted to know if there was any thought on that.
Yeah, definitely. So by discussing 8 to 80, it's really this idea that the environment and existing infrastructure is safe and accessible for anyone, basically for young children, ranging from young children up to older individuals. I believe as you're speaking, Jairus was taking notes, so we will definitely incorporate that feedback into our ideas. But in focusing on 8 through 80, we really want to make sure that these spaces are not geared solely towards able-bodied individuals, but for people who are younger. And that could mean, recommending changes in signal timing to allow for more time for youth and older individuals to cross the street, or making sure that there's adequate lighting, or even making sure that there's designated pickup and drop off that might be designated more towards children. And that could be in these pedestrian waiting areas. It could be lighting. It could be landscaping, it could be seating, it could be play areas. And then in terms of the roadways, it could also be, recommending that there be protected bike lanes instead of just a buffered bike lane, which makes individuals feel safer and is more accessible for older and for younger people. So we're definitely trying to approach the project and our conceptual designs in a way that's as accommodating for younger children and ranging through to older individuals as well. Thanks.
This is great, thank you. It's very timely, and I think it's totally appropriate for our group to hear it and get the final report when it's due in October. And my commissioners might think it's kind of funny, but the downtown areas, because I represent downtown Tampa, is a no-brainer, right? This is going to have to happen. But we have public hearings all the time where this room is full of neighbors who don't want more development because they don't want the traffic.
Mm-hmm.
So I would encourage you to keep going down the path of how this could kind of work in the suburbs to take that traffic pressure off when new developments are heard and that sort of thing. So thank you. Good work.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Okay. Yeah, Commissioner Green.
Is this something that I'm sorry, I'm sort of directing my questions to our executive director and our chairman. But is this something that we are going to take up on a continuing basis from this point forward, in terms of how AV technology in shared mobility will increasingly impact the built environment, the physical environment, let's say, particularly the way in which we form policies or make land use regulations, let's say.
Yes, I think it's very relevant for our agency to be looking into what are the best practices, which is essentially what their project will be yielding for us is some best practice recommendations from a policy standpoint. Then we would need to be approaching the local governments about moving that forward into the comprehensive plans. Some pieces may be more appropriate for them to consider into the land development code. And from the transportation division side of our agency, the long-range transportation plan is also required to contemplate how and what role automated vehicles, shared mobility will have in the future. There's some component to this that is still, we're figuring it out because the technology continues to evolve. And so I think it's something we'll have to continue to stay abreast of and see if we need to modify and evolve along with the technology.
Good. You know I'm going to hold you to that.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. It's a great project, and we look forward to seeing your group come back when it's finalized. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay. We are going to move on to item 5 on our agenda, adoption of proposed fiscal year 2021 budget. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Melissa Zornita, Executive Director. In your packet, you have a couple of decision units that compose our proposed 2020 and 2021 fiscal year budgets. This is the start of a 2-year budget cycle, and as per your policies, the proposed budget is to be presented to you all for your approval prior to us forwarding it to Hillsborough County for their consideration. The decision units that are before you provide for a small increase of $19,600 in FY20 and $21,100 in FY21 to our operating budget. And these funds are to directly address inflation in amounts and line items such as memberships and dues, software licenses, and things of that nature that would maintain our existing level of service to the community. The decision units also cover our capital equipment in the amount of $15,500 for each year. That is to be requested new every year, but that is the same amount of capital equipment budget that we have this year. And then the last decision unit is for some additional funds in a what's called an allotment in the county budget. This would be for some additional consultant dollars, and above the $100,000 that is in our operating budget currently, we would be asking for $150,000 in each year to be added to an allotment that's not added to our budget as a reoccurring item, so to speak. The allotment is approved each budget cycle, and that would be to support consultant projects, to support the update of the county's comprehensive plan, as well as other requests from each of our 4 local governments. The final piece to the required budget submittal for the county is a page outlining opportunities for efficiencies in the budget, where we've outlined how we've utilized technology, more electronic agenda packets, and some other changes such as that to absorb many of the many of the areas where we otherwise would have seen inflation in the budget, in our operating budget. It also outlines that there are some of the opportunities for us to increase revenue, either through the reevaluation of our fees, which is occurring right now, but also looking at the opportunities to leverage partnerships with our client governments and grant opportunities. One example of this is how we've partnered with the City of Tampa on the EBOR CRA plan update, and they've contributed to that, and we've contributed to that to create a larger pot of money to hire a consultant from. I'd be happy to answer any questions. There is a resolution in your packet for approval that is before you. Thank you.
Okay. Before I ask if there's any questions, I wanted to thank Commissioner Joseph, who chaired the Budget Committee, and also Planning Commission staff, specifically Felicia, for meeting with the committee and answering all the questions. So thank you. Any questions for Melissa? Commissioner Green?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Melissa, you mentioned the allotment, $150,000 for managing the 4 comprehensive plans. County, the City of Tampa, Temple Terrace, and Plan City. Now, is that all inclusive of that
No, the $150,000 would be for us to pay for consultants to do different studies for us as it relates to each of those plans.
Okay.
We've utilized the money in recent years to do the Brandon East-West corridor study. This year, we've utilized some of that money to do a market analysis of the population and job projections. So things of that nature.
Essentially special projects.
Yes, that's a very good description of
Okay,
it.
all right, good, thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions? If there's no further questions, would someone like to make a motion to approve this fiscal year 2021 budget? Commissioner Joseph?
I'll make a motion that we approve the 4-year 2021 budget for submittal to the Board of County Commissioners.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Joseph, second by Commissioner Powell. Any further discussion before we vote? All in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We are moving on to item number 6, the Port Tampa Bay permit number 18-051.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Melissa Dickens, Planning Commission staff. This item is the Planning Commission consistency review of Port Tampa Bay permit number 18-051. This permit is for shoreline stabilization to the Port Sutton Channel. And this is an action item today, and there will be a resolution provided for your vote. The port permit was transmitted to the Planning Commission for consistency, our consistency review with the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan, the future of Hillsborough. And under chapters 95-488 and 97-351, the Planning Commission is the local planning agency that is charged with reviewing Port Tampa Bay permits for consistency. This slide shows the general project location. Again, this proposed project is in unincorporated Hillsborough County. It is on the eastern shore of Tampa Bay in an existing man-made dredge channel. This slide shows the area zoomed in slightly to show the project area and the surrounding areas. You can see it's on the north side of the channel. And surrounding the property are a number of shipping uses and also industrial uses. A little bit more about some of those existing conditions. Again, this is an existing man-made dredge channel. It has some partially hardened shorelines. There are both mangroves and some invasive species in the rest of the shoreline. Specifically, there's some Brazilian pepper mixed in there, so there's a mix of mangrove and invasive plants along the shoreline. This is an active shipping area, and what is occurring is there is a lot of tugboat activity, and the wash from those tugboats, the water from those tugboats is coming on to the shoreline and causing some significant shoreline erosion. We went out there and visited the site, and you can see parts of the shoreline starting to erode fairly significantly. The shoreline provides or is under the supports for a liquid ammonia pipeline. So that is the reason for stabilizing the shoreline out there. And the shoreline stabilization is proposed to be 548 linear feet of steel sheet pile toe wall. And as part of the stabilization, there were some unavoidable wetland impacts. Those wetland impacts are proposed to be mitigated through the Tampa Bay Mitigation Bank, so that is in accordance with comprehensive plan policy. And in terms of considerations, you'll see the full list of policies that were examined in your packet, but we considered a number of factors in reviewing this permit for consistency with the comprehensive plan. First, this is an active shipping area. There is ongoing activity there that is contributing to erosion, and the comprehensive plan provides direction on maintaining existing channels and maintaining existing opportunities for water-dependent uses. So this proposed stabilization would be consistent with that policy. Also, the threatened liquid ammonia pipeline is obviously very important for the health, safety, and welfare of the community. So this had an overriding public benefit, public health, public safety benefit. And again, the limited amount of wetland impacts are proposed to be mitigated. So that all is consistent with comprehensive plan policy, both in the conservation and aquifer recharge element and also in the coastal management element. And in terms of recommendation, Planning Commission staff recommends that you approve the resolution in your packet, finding Port Tampa Bay permit number 18-051 consistent with the Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Willman?
Thank you, Melissa. Just a question about the mitigation and the 0.3 credits that will be provided. How is that a formula that's stated specifically? How was that calculation made?
Sure. So I can provide some limited information, and then we also have Ben Bryce, who's here representing the applicant, and perhaps he can provide some more detail. But there were approximately 0.3 acres that were impacted, and it was essentially parallel to the shoreline where wetlands need to be impacted in order to harden that shoreline and stabilize it. And perhaps Mr. Bryce can provide additional detail on how that all was determined.
Hi, Ben Bryce from Schneider Engineering. The purchasing credits on an acre-for-acre basis of surface water impacts for FDEP and for Army Corps of Engineers, they actually did a UMAM evaluation to figure out the functional loss, which turns out to be significantly less, but to satisfy the requirements, for Hillsborough County Environmental Protection Commission, they have to purchase the amount of credits that is equal to the surface water impacts. So that's where it comes out to be 0.331 acres.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. I think Commissioner Willman was really trying to understand better the mitigation bank system and how that works. Is that what you're asking? No? Okay, good. All right. Oh, okay. All right.
Well, there's a pre-permitted mitigation bank called Tampa Bay Mitigation Bank. They restored over 180 acres of land, and they were awarded those credits through permits through the Army Corps of Engineers, FDEP, and Hillsborough County Environmental Protection Commission. And they determined that the amount of improvement they did on the land was equal to so many credits. Those credits are then made available to applicants to purchase to offset impacts.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, I'm just curious, I want to follow up. What does that mean in dollars for the 3 acres?
The credits are sold on a minimum, there's a minimum threshold that they sell, which is 0.18 acres. And so it's, I believe, $10,000 or $15,000 per tenth of an acre. Depending on the type, there's mangrove credits or forested estuarine credits were $15,000 for a tenth of an acre, and then there's tidal estuarine credits for $10,000 an acre.
So is so is my math correct? That's round numbers, $300,000.
$31,000.
$31,000. That's why I wanted to get my math correct. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just follow up a little bit because the cost of the mitigation credits definitely varies based upon the type of mitigation being performed, the basin that it's located in, et cetera, because there are some forms that are substantially more than 10,000.
But it's a very small impact number. People typically buy 1,
Correct.
2, 3, 4 credits.
Correct.
So I just wondered if you explored the option of adding more mangroves to help stabilize rather than take them all away?
So the condition that's there is the anhydrous ammonia pipeline is at the very top of the bank, and directly across the channel is another facility. And when they dock at that facility, the tugboats turn perpendicular to the shoreline. And so you have one of these tugboats that have 10,000 horsepower pushing directly against the shoreline. And in some places, the shoreline looks like a cliff. It's no longer a slope. So it drops down 8 feet, and then there's a small flat area where the mangroves are. So there's nowhere to add more mangroves at this point. And if you backfill, you'll remove the area where the mangroves can actually grow.
If I could do just a quick follow-up. So just, just when you're analyzing these cases, is it always the default to try to add more mangroves?
It's one of the options you can look at. They are in a unique situation here. Is the channel inside Port Sutton is a federally authorized channel and maintained channel, and so the toe of the channel is somewhere in the range of 50 feet off the shoreline, and so they had looked at different options of like rip-ropping the shoreline as a less invasive thing than going to a steel toe wall and concrete rip-rap, but to establish a stable slope, the slope of the riprap would extend into the federal channel, and you can't do that. You can't impede navigation in the federal channels. So the only way they could establish a shoreline that will actually be stable is they go down on a 3-to-1 slope to the concrete revetment, and then the steel toe walls you mentioned drop straight down so you can achieve the toe of the depth needed for the channel.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Okay, would someone like to make a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner
I'd like to move that the Planning Commission find Port Tampa Bay permit application number 18-051 consistent with the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County.
Second.
Okay, got a motion by Commissioner Dowdy, second by Commissioner Joseph. Any further discussion before we vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
We are moving on to item number 7, which is the Land Development Code text amendment. Comprehensive rewrite of tree and landscape regulations.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. David Hay with your Planning Commission staff. The next item for your review is the City of Tampa Land Development Code text amendment. This is a comprehensive rewrite of the tree and landscaping regulations. Though the amendment has been in the works for a while, it is being processed as part of the January 2019 cycle of text amendments. The amendment has been publicly initiated after a number of extensive public-private stakeholder meetings were held. The proposed language would fundamentally change how the city manages and protects the city's tree canopy. The text amendment proposes changes to chapters 13, 16, 19, 22, and 27. The proposed changes consist of over 60 pages, but we are going to highlight some of the main changes and how they relate with comprehensive plan policies. Some of the changes include certain trees will now be classified as a grand tree if they have a DBH of 32 inches or greater. Pruning permits would now be required for limbs greater than 4 inches in diameter on private property. Mitigation would now be determined by overall canopy square footage instead of inch for inch. There would be adjustments for species type and overall health. Camphor trees would now be removable without a permit, but mitigation would still be required, and new camphor trees could only be replanted in limited circumstances. The city would now also be broken up into 5 tree trust fund districts to ensure that mitigation remains in the same part of the city. Tree credits and debits would now be based on specific tree types, with 60% of replacement trees required to be native, which is up from current 50%. All mitigation trees are now protected, up from only a 5-inch and greater being protected under the current code. The minimum size of mitigation trees would also increase from the current 2 inches caliber to a 2.5 inch in caliber. Tree surveys will now need to be verified by city staff or other designated personnel. Arborist reports would also be required for any appeals of a hazardous tree determination that go in front of Tampa City Council. The new code also sets up a tree removal zone, which permits some tree removal by right if the tree makes the lot unbuildable. The tree zone has specific distance requirements to ensure compliance. And finally, the proposed amendment codifies the grand tree species matrix. It should be noted that there are other changes in this proposed text amendment, but staff determined that those changes were outside of the Planning Commission's purview and other chapters that of the Land Development Code. Your staff found two main areas of consistency. Proposed text, especially the creation of the tree removal zone, provides for greater certainty in the development entitlement process. This is consistent with Land Use Policy 8.14.1. The comprehensive plan has general policies regarding the protection of the city's urban canopy. The provided text, though making substantial changes, continues to protect the city's tree canopy, and as such is consistent with Land Use Policies 1.27.1 through 1.27.6, 1.27.8, 1.28.2, and 1.28.4. It also is consistent with Recreation Open Space Policies 1.3.1 through 1.3.3. So based on all that criteria, the Planning Commission staff recommends that the proposed Land Development Code text amendment be found consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Imagine 2040 Tampa Comprehensive Plan. City staff is here. Kristen Moore with City Legal and Kathy Beck with Natural Resources are here. I believe Kristen Moore would like, has a short presentation. Okay, you are. And we're all available if you have any questions.
Good afternoon, Kristen Morris, City of Tampa Legal Department. I just wanted to point out for you that we have provided a handout that we think highlights some of the major changes in what the current code provides versus what the new code would provide. Hopefully that's helpful to you as you review this. It is quite a voluminous document. We recognize that. So I am here to answer any questions that you may have, and I will remain available throughout.
Okay, thank you. Anyone who wants to speak under public comment on this, please come forward, state your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes per person.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Lou Bailey. I'm at 912 South Oregon Avenue, and I'm here as a citizen and also on behalf of the Board of Historic Hyde Park Neighborhood Association. You guys should have received an email of supporting this change. It was on this kind of letterhead, if it looks familiar. We find it to be consistent with the protection of the Urban Forest Management Plan, which we care deeply about in Hyde Park. You also got a letter from me last week. It's a little bit longer because I've been the workhorse for my neighborhood on this project. I also provided a summary for you and more citizen-friendly. This is what's new in the code, and this is what it used to be. And I've had a number of neighbors in other neighborhoods ask me for a copy of it to understand, because it is such a big document and there's a lot going on. But I love trees, I love animals, I love the environment, and I like this new code. I think it is consistent with the Urban Forest Management Plan, and I encourage you to find it consistent. Thank you.
And I'm Jennifer Motzinger with the Tampa Bay Builders Association. I also love trees, the environment, and especially animals. And I concur with Mary Lou Bailey. The Builders Association met extensively with the Tree Something, Say Something group, and we feel this is a compromise. We would like to see it reviewed formally within 6 months to a year, because there's a lot of changes, and with changes always comes unintended consequences. So that's all we have. Thank you.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mike Peterson, Government Affairs Counsel for the Greater Tampa Realtors. Just want to let you know that this has been in the works for about 3 years, so please pass this. I think you'll find it consistent. The staff has done a great job herding cats of a lot of different people who had different understandings of this code going in, and the complication of going from the old codes to this new comprehensive format has really been something, and the tree advocate groups and the Tampa Bay Builders Association did a great job of partnering up and working through a lot of the tough issues, so the rest of us could swoop in later and say thank you and hope you pass it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Cynthia Duncan, 4205 West Barcelona Street, Tampa, Florida. It's as if this group of people, we came before you, 11 of us, April of last year. It's been a long road, a lot of work. It's as if all the groups read your very mission. You know, promote, coordinate, collaborate, facilitate with the community to improve economic development, make sure that property owners have their rights to use their property in an economically beneficial way, and quality of life, ensure that we maintain our trees. You know, we heard the shared transportation study. I walk and bike and run and take shared transportation all the time. It's so much better when there are trees. you find yourself scurrying from shade to shade. And there's been a lot of talk of resiliency and sustainment, and this new tree code really feeds into that and ensures that we protect our environment for the city of Tampa. I encourage you to find it consistent with the comprehensive plan, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any additional public comment? Okay.
Can you give this to the chair? Good afternoon. My name is Lorraine Perino. I live at 604 Ontario Avenue, Tampa 33606. I'm here representing the Davis Island Civic Association. One day in the late summer of 2017, as I was taking my dog for his daily walk around the neighborhood where I live, as we turned the corner, I was totally stunned by what I didn't see. I had to stop and take in the entire scene. The majestic grand oak, which had stood in front of the property on the corner, was gone. It had vanished. The first thing that came to my mind was the desert, where there had formerly been a lushness of shade and green and cool air emanating from that magnificent green grand oak. There was nothing now at all. A feeling of desolation filled my soul. According to the city's urban forest study, which is completed every 5 years, Tampa's tree canopy has decreased by 2% in the last 5 years. According to an informal study which the Davis Island Tree Protection and Restoration Committee completed in 2017, in the period from January 2015 to June of 2017, 165 trees were removed from Davis Island alone. The comprehensive tree ordinance, which you will consider today, is the product of the work and cooperation between tree advocates, the Tampa Bay Builders Association, and city staff. It is the product of hundreds of hours of meeting between tree advocates, volunteer residents representing civic associations from a wide swath of the city, who met amongst themselves over the course of 2018, and also with the TBBA and the city staff in order to hammer out the compromise document which you have before you today. It complies with all of the environmental objectives of Tampa's comprehensive plan. The comprehensive tree ordinance rewrite has as one of its goals the saving of as many trees as possible during construction of a new home or McMansion in the city of Tampa. Had this comprehensive rewrite been in effect in the summer of 2017, the grand tree, which symbolizes so many trees in other neighborhoods in Tampa city limits, could very well have been saved and would still be contributing oxygen to all and habitat for wildlife. In light of the evidence presented above, I strongly urge you to find the comprehensive rewrite of the City of Tampa's tree ordinance consistent with Tampa's comprehensive plan, and that you forward it for adoption to Tampa City Council as soon as possible. And you should have received a letter from the president of the DECA Civic Association in support of this.
Yes, we
Thank
did
you.
receive it. We passed it around so everybody could see, so.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Chelsea Johnson, 3313 Home Court in Tampa. I am the accidental tree lady. I founded the group Tree Something Say Something about a year ago, and y'all probably remember when we were here in April of last year. In that time, we have collaborated with the Tampa Bay Builders Association, and I want to say a special thank you for their willingness to collaborate with us. Over nearly a year, we have met regularly with stakeholders, neighborhood associations, concerned citizens, tree advocates, city staff, builders, the greater Tampa Bay area realtors has come on board recently, and I'm very excited to tell you all that I think there's tremendous support for this new tree code rewrite. I urge you to pass it. Many people have spent lots of hours coming together, collaborating, which gave us the tree removal zone, which is something that both the public and the Builders Association has wanted for a long time. While I was down putting money in the meter for my car, I spoke to Joe Chilura, one of the original writers of the tree code, and told me that he is also in full support. Old Seminole Heights Neighborhood Association sent you all a letter of support. I met with them a couple of months ago and brought them up to speed so that they felt comfortable with it. Over the past couple of months, I've also been speaking at neighborhood associations, including THAN, the Tampa Homeowners Association, a network of neighborhoods. I think I just messed that up. Sorry, but it's the umbrella association. I brought all those attendees up to speed. I've recently spoke at the Palmacia West Neighborhood Association. all I hear are positive things. People still want to provide input, but overall the changes are very positive for our urban canopy as well as for allowing people to have certain rights for their properties. So that being said, thank you for your time, and we hope that you will ask any questions that you may have. Special shout out to city staff who made the time to meet with us all this past year as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any additional public comment? Okay, no additional public comment. Any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Marina? Willman?
Thank you. This question, I think this is for David. Hey, we received a public comment from Cynthia Duncan regarding what appears to be maybe error, just maybe Scrivener error that want to understand if that's something that we need to consider. Do you have that available to you?
Yeah, I'm familiar with the letter. We reviewed it. There was kind of like a tomato type moment where some wording might have got readjusted, but even with the other way that you can interpret it, it doesn't affect the consistency finding. It's still all, they were considered very minor in the very large document.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Commissioner Marina?
Thank you. It's a question for Ms. Mora. With going through this, and a homeowner that I know is also going through is the tree removal zone kind of was a stumbling block. And my question is it possible for the ordinance to have an example written into the ordinance of this is, if you had a lot and there's a tree and here's the house, because it seemed like there's a lot of math to do there. Whereas then when you look at the examples of, for example, the height of a tree, those examples are in there. And there's other parts of the ordinance that have images of streetscapes and different things like that. Is that possible to put into the ordinance, or is that, I don't want to hold it up, but, if possible, is it possible to have some sort of example be provided to a homeowner that meets the standard of what is in the ordinance, even if it doesn't necessarily have to be written into the ordinance?
Yes, I think that is definitely a graphic we can work on. I don't know that we'll have it complete and in time for first reading with City Council, but that's great feedback. It's certainly something that we can provide homeowners and have like some documents on hand to help them understand how the tree removal zone works. It's great feedback. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Powell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In looking at this, I had some concerns on specifically where we're adding into the proposed code here, where you're going to need an additional permits required for specimen tree limbs for 4 inches. And in my mind, a 4-inch tree limb doesn't seem to be that large. And so my concern is if this is going to be a new requirement for the public to go in and request, number one, is the city all of a sudden going to be inundated with these permit requests and then having to provide documents, drawings, just because maybe they have one little limb, that's going to be, just doesn't look right, hitting their house, things of that nature, which, insurance companies now will do site visits if there's, any sort of limb that's, overhanging, which, may be, a requirement. So do we have any sort of idea or a study that, I don't know if it was incorporated with this, that would, kind of estimate, hey, because of this addition, we're going to be potentially looking at having, 1,000 new permits, potentially, getting requested, and do we have the bandwidth, for that? And I mean, I guess I don't even know like what the cost of those permits are going to be.
So, and I may ask Ms. Beck in a moment to address the cost of the permit. It's not a very expensive permit for the tree removal permits. I don't think we have an estimate or an exact number, but what we do know is that over the past few years, we are seeing a 4-inch is a more significant limb. So you're probably not going to see them really on trees that are less than 24 inches as a practical matter. And currently today, what's called a specimen tree, that 24-inch or greater DBH, but less than the 32-inch, because we currently require all trimming on grand trees so everything 32 inches and bigger already requires a permit today. The change is for that delta there between 24 inches and 32 inches, but only over private property, because currently today you would have to, for those 4-inch limbs, if they're extending over public property, you would still have to get a permit. So it's a smaller area than it sounds like at first. And what we see is a lot of times in those types of situations, those limbs are trimmed improperly. And that has often resulted in code enforcement, which is a more expensive process and a much more elaborate process for the city to try to go through when someone has improperly pruned a tree. It is our preference to permit this at the outset and provide information on how to properly prune the tree and make sure the homeowner understands and is doing the pruning properly in the first place so they don't end up in a code enforcement. So from that perspective, I don't think we see a lot more work for the city. It's going to be a little bit more work on the front end for our Natural Resources Department to do that permitting, but it's probably going to be a lot less work on the back end for the code enforcement.
Okay, I understand. I just don't know if there was thought, sometimes it's a great idea, but then, sometimes has unintended consequences and things, like come up, and someone had mentioned that earlier, and that was something that came to my mind. Another thing that I didn't see in the code, but I didn't get to read all 84 pages of it, does this address at all where there's trees that have like TECO power lines that are going through them? Because I live in Brandon area, and I just had a situation for my home, like, which this won't apply there, where they came in and they butchered my trees. They butchered them to the point where I had to have them removed. I had my father track them down, and he came back and with the crew, and I was like, what did you do to my trees? And ultimately, I had like a big V going through all of my whole canopy, and it had to they just went ahead and had to remove them because it just, was a blight. Made my house look terrible. So is there any sort of protection from TECO, like with this ordinance? I don't know if we have that capability, We
don't. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess if you're TECO, but the federal requirements for how to trim around power lines is not something that we have any authority over. They have regulations for how they're supposed to do it, and as long as TECO is trimming consistent with those federal requirements, they are allowed sort of carte blanche to do what they need to do. What we have done in this code is tried to re-strategize where we put our trees in order to avoid those types of conflicts moving forward. There's precious little we can do now that, for those situations where we found them, but we've tried to implement strategies like, instead of requiring a developer to then, or a builder to then plant in front of the home, they can plant on other people's properties, and they can look for places where there's space in people's backyards and neighbors' yards where they can plant trees through an agreement with those homeowners. We've tried to look for strategies to put trees in places where they're then not going to run into those conflicts, and that's how we're trying to address those types of situations.
Okay. Because I was just curious, not to beat a dead horse, I'll move on, but, if the public has to provide, drawings to, an arborist reports and things like that, I just would think that there would be that same requirement, upon, TECO, just say, hey, at least this is like, what we're gonna do, because, they kind of do operate with impunity, at least in my personal viewpoint, and so I just would like to know if this, can address that to some point. At least we can say, hey, we know this is about to happen, we don't like it, but at least we can, someone can let the homeowner know. Otherwise, coming home and then you've got, a tornado just went through your trees. So, I'm sorry.
Sure, we do address TECO as much as we are allowed to. TECO does provide information about where they're going to be trimming to our arborist staff. Our arborist staff review what they're doing, make sure what they're doing is in compliance with the federal requirements. Obviously, it's not like what we would prefer to see, but they do make sure that what TECO is doing is in compliance with those federal requirements. And TECO, when they do effectively remove trees, is required to pay mitigation just as any other builder or developer would do. They are one of the most significant contributors to the Tree Mitigation Trust Fund.
Someone should stop by my house.
Yeah, I was going to make kind of similar comments, but I know it's more expensive, but it seems to me that undergrounding utilities would be a pretty obvious answer here. And I don't know whether that's anything that this code could even address, but it's just kind of wanted to throw that out there in the universe. And great work. I remember you here last April. It's great collaboration, so congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had one question. This is just sort of a general question. I don't know if does this ordinance extend to commercial properties with parking lots, or parking lots in general.
Yes.
That's the portion I was looking for. Maybe I got, didn't get far enough into it, but I was wondering about the requirements for tree planting in surface parking lots.
That might be more a question for Ms. Beck than it is for me.
Okay.
Would you like to address that?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Kathy Beck, Natural Resources Coordinator. The current code requires trees planted in vehicular use areas and commercial sites at 1 tree per 1,500 square feet of vehicular use area.
Okay.
And along buffers, 1 per 40 linear feet along the frontage, right-of-way frontage.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Does that answer?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry about that. I've been bad about that today. Any additional questions? Okay, would someone like to make a motion?
I move that we find the proposed land development code text amendment consistent with the Imagine 2040 Tampa Comprehensive Plan and recommend that be forwarded to Tampa City Council for adoption.
Okay, got a motion by Commissioner Marino, a second by Commissioner Dix. Any further discussion before we vote? All in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We are going to move on to item number 8, Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan Amendment Briefing 18-14.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Will Augustine, Planning Commission staff. The next agenda item before you is Hillsborough County's Comprehensive Plan Amendment 1814. CPA 1814 is located just south of Plant City, along the west side of Sam Aston Road and just north of Trapnell Road. The subject site is a privately initiated map amendment in rural eastern Hillsborough County, which is approximately 5.3 acres in size. The blue line above the subject site is the jurisdictional boundary of Plant City. The aerial shows that the surrounding area is predominantly rural, with single-family homes on large plots. The land use of Residential 1 predominates the area. There are enclaves to the southeast which predate the comprehensive plan. The subject property is north of Trapnell Sam Aston Road intersection. Mud Lake Road is to the west, and Highway 39 is to the east. The subject site has an adopted Residential 2 land use classification. It was given to recognize the existing development on the site with the creation of the comprehensive plan. It is being used as a mobile home park with 30 mobile homes on the site. The blue shaded public area to the south is Trapnell Elementary School. The Residential 1 is the predominant land use of the surrounding properties. The white designated area to the northeast is the city of Plant City. Land use is Residential 4 and is served by utilities. The applicant is requesting a Residential 6 land use classification change. The current adopted land use classification of Residential 2 allows a maximum of 10 dwelling units on the 5.3 acre site. Suburban scale neighborhood commercial, office, or multi-purpose projects are limited to 110,000 square feet with a floor area ratio of 0.25. With the land use change to Residential 6, the subject site would have a potential build-out of up to 31 dwelling units. Suburban scale neighborhood commercial, office, or multi-purpose projects are limited to 175,000 square feet or a floor area ratio of 0.25. This site does not qualify for location criteria. This briefing requires no action. CPA 1814 will be presented at the upcoming April 8th Planning Commission meeting, and this concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Dix?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I was reading through this this past weekend, this came before us a few months back as far as an informational presentation, and then it was on an agenda for consideration for consistency, and then the night of the decision, it was removed, voluntary removal, and then it's come back before us. I didn't have, you know, at this weekend, the former one versus the current one, but as I looked at it, trying to remember, I didn't see much difference. Can you tell me what the difference is between then and now in the
The applicant
proposal?
had originally requested residential 4, and now is requesting residential 6.
So we're increasing the residential area for that one little enclave area. That's the proposal.
That is what the applicant is requesting.
Right, now I get it. And all the other properties around it, of course, are not anywhere near that dense.
That is correct.
Okay. Thanks for clearing that up.
Okay, Commissioner Green?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I just had a general question. This is a mobile home park conversion. Is that how it's being considered? And is it being done under the proposed new county regulations for increasing affordable housing?
I don't think that they are asking to utilize that provision.
No, they're just
That
going-
provision would allow them to keep the 2-unit per acre density, or if they were exceeding that density and non-conforming to the category, so if they were built at 4 units per acre, but their land use is 2, it would let them keep it if they were doing it for an affordable housing purpose.
Okay.
So I think by the fact that they're coming in and asking for the plan amendment to the higher density, I don't want to speak on behalf of the applicant, but I would take that as they're not looking to utilize that provision.
Okay. All right. Can you let us know when the first project that comes before us?
Yes,
that-
we can keep track of that,
Okay.
yeah.
All right,
Yeah,
good. Thank
okay,
you.
sure.
Commissioner Rodriguez?
Thank you. As noted in the map, this is outside the jurisdictional boundary of Plant City. Is this also outside of the urban service area?
It is outside the urban service area.
Okay, very good. And what was the current number of dwelling units that are currently on site?
There are approximately 30 mobile homes.
There's already 30 mobile homes on the site, and at residential 2, they should only have 10 dwelling units on the site for its current size. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Powell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do we know what the applicants, they intend to do? Like, why are they trying to get that much density?
Not yet. We're currently writing the staff report now.
Okay, any, Commissioner Wilman?
I'm sorry.
Oh, just for Will, when you're in your staff report, you probably were already going to do this, but could you provide the number of mobile homes that could be built in addition to just standard residences when you provide that information to us?
Yes, ma'am, I will.
Commissioner Dix?
Yeah, just one question. Commissioner Rodriguez brought this up, and I thought it was an excellent point. There's more mobile homes on that property now than would normally be allowed. It's my understanding that that has been such for a long, long time. But if we were to do this, it would allow that kind of thing going forward on this property, which exceeds the density of all of the properties around there. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Any additional questions? Okay, we'll move on to Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan Amendment Briefing 18-20.
Good afternoon, Krista Kelly, Planning Commission staff. I'm presenting Comprehensive Plan 18-20, Lutz Lake Fern Road and Sun Lake Boulevard. This is a future land use map amendment located in the northwest portion of the county. It's 9.4 acres in size. It's privately initiated. The site itself fronts on both Lutz Lake Fern to the north and Sun Lake Boulevard to the east. It is an urban service area and within the Lutz Community Plan boundary. This area shows you the development pattern in the surrounding area. First, let me mention that the site is predominantly undeveloped with one home up here in the northwest corner. To the east and south, it's generally rural home sites on large lots. To the north, it's becoming suburbanized, and there is some development along Sun Lake Boulevard. This is an office park. This is the adopted future land use map showing it currently residential 1, as are some of the properties to the west and south. The properties also to the west are residential 2 and residential 4, and also to the east. The applicant's requesting residential 6 within this area. It's a higher density that's generally found in that area. However, there is such a mixture of densities. That's something that's going to be taken into consideration for compatibility. The impact of this change, it would introduce an additional 47 units from 9 units to 56 units. The square footage would increase from 30,000 square feet to 175 square feet. The FAR remains the same. It's whatever's less intense on that site. And that was very brief, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Okay, any questions? Oh, Commissioner Kress?
Could you pull back the map? Sure. That just shows it. I just wondered what kind of access to the site? Is it only off of Lutz Lake Fern Road? Do you know?
Right now, I believe that it is Lutz Lake Fern Road, but I guess they have the opportunity to go off of Sun Lake Boulevard. We don't deal with the site plan at this stage.
But you think it could connect to both major roads there?
I believe so. We would have to talk to transportation to confirm that, and I can come back with that information.
I think that's helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Powell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was, over the weekend, I was reading the Lutz community plan, and if the zoning change or this, to go up to the 56 units, is it going to be able to still be consistent with their desire for larger lot sizes? Because if I recall correctly, I was trying to reference really fast, but it seemed like the plan it noted, or the community plan, noted that they did not want to have, a lot of high density, and they wanted to maintain, the larger, lot sizes. And I just wanted to know if this does, or if it were to go through, is that still going to be something that is going to be accommodated? And, because I recall the last land use meeting at the BOCC, one of the commissioners brought up the fact that they felt like the, I don't know if it was Planning Commission or just in general, but that we've been, sort of like not adhering to and just like trumping over, like community plans. I think it was maybe Commissioner Mariella. So I was just wanting to know, since I had been brought up at that meeting, I've started to myself go over these community plans to try to understand them and know them. And, this is adding like really high density, and it seems to me it differs from what the community plan would like to have.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. The Lutz community plan to the east of Del Mayberry really seeks to maintain that rural 1 acre or greater density. To the west, they recognize that there's an existing suburban style development pattern, and it's not as prohibitive in that area. We can explore it further, but generally they made a distinction between the east side and the west side of Del Mayberry.
I just wanted to ask if they've been, because I just would hate for it to go through, to them for some reason, and then they say, oh, well, this is, not adhering to the plan, and, this is, again, we're overreaching, we're not thinking about, maintaining with these, and, I don't want to personally put something forward to them that they don't, they're not going to want, so.
No, and they're very attentive. So they're going to pay attention to this area. But they did, in their community plan, look at the distinction and not override what is existing. Sure.
Any other questions? Commissioner Willman?
So when there is a proposal for a land use change in a community plan area, is there any requirement for the applicant to meet with the community, or have a public meeting prior to the public hearing?
It's highly encouraged. It's not a requirement, but most applicants recognize that they need to get along with their neighbors, and they do try to talk to the homeowners associations in the area, the neighbors adjacent to the site. At this point, I'm not aware if they have or not, but when the applicant's here, we can also explore that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Marino?
Sorry, I just have one question. If you go back to, you can't really tell on the slide you have now, but on the proposed 2025 future land use plan, so I guess this would be southwest of the site on Jirachi Road.
Jirachi?
I grew up there. I should know the name of it. Is that Res 12 below Appian Way? You can't tell on the slide, but on our handouts, it looks like it comes up, and then on the satellite, it looks like it's an apartment complex. It looks like it's multifamily.
Honestly, I'd have to look deeper
Okay.
into it. I don't recall off the top of my head.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Okay. Any additional questions? We'll move on to our executive director's report.
Good afternoon again, Melissa Zornita, Executive Director. At your seats, you should have your Executive Director's report, which covers a number of different activities either myself or some of the staff have been attending. We have had a number of meetings with the county on the fee study that I mentioned during the budget presentation. And as part of that, they've also asked the consultant to look into making sure there isn't any redundancies in the work that's being done and fees that are being charged. So the top thing that says interview with planning roles study consultant is that's what they're looking at, is our role versus development services and how are we interacting. Are there opportunities for efficiencies or anything that somebody might get double charged for in the fees. Let's see, I did have the opportunity to meet with Commissioner Smith actually after the land use meeting where she brought up the community plans. Her concern was that some of them have, one that, yes, are being followed, which they are a part of the adopted comprehensive plan, so something we are taking into account in our consistency determinations. Additionally, we talked about the process for updating some of the community plans because some of them have gotten a little dated. They were done in the 2000s, and the board's policy originally was that they would be updated every 10 years. They're intended to be a slightly more midterm planning documents than the long-range comprehensive plan. But we talked about the need to update the overall comprehensive plan first and get that body of work done prior to working on the community plans, because once the communities see the overall framework of how the plan has been updated, there may be things that are in their community plans that are otherwise now addressed in the comprehensive plan. I've been having a number of meetings with the county on updating the comprehensive plan. We've been working with a consultant from Renaissance Planning Group to bring forward a presentation to the Board of County Commissioners. It's now scheduled for April 4th in a workshop to talk about a process for them to arrive at some consensus on some directions and guidance for us on the comprehensive plan. That we have the board, you may recall, and it's mentioned in many of our plan amendment reports for the unincorporated county. They adopted some guiding principles about maybe it's 3 years ago now, but they were very high-level tenets like quality of life, fiscal sustainability. And what we'd like to arrive at with the board is a little bit more details about what they mean and what direction they would like to go in those regards, so that we make sure that we are updating the comprehensive plan in the direction that they want us to. Because there are a lot of different ways we could go in preserving quality of life or dealing with fiscal sustainability, and we want to make sure we're going in the direction that they're on board with. So we will be outlining with the consultant on April 4th the process that we would work with the board and the public on arriving at that consensus on that direction.
Melissa, if I can
Yes,
interject,
sure.
just ask a question. Does that suggest then that the community plans will need to be updated prior to this?
Actually, in
and
my
inform
mind,
the comprehensive plan, or
how I sort of see it is that the other chapters or elements of the comprehensive plan need to be updated in sort of a big picture to reflect the big picture vision. Right now, the comprehensive plan has a horizon date of 2025, which we're kind of quickly approaching. And so we need to get that updated. Many of the things that are in the community plans, there's a lot of commonality between them. I would say almost every community plan talks about wanting their major corridor improved in terms of its aesthetics, land use, connectivity. So if we could write some overall countywide policy about how our corridors are being addressed, which we've got a good start from the Brandon Corridor Study, then perhaps after the comp plan's updated, we can go back out to each of the communities and say, okay, as we update your community plan, now look at what we're doing to how the policy framework has changed. Do you still need that policy? Is there something else that needs to be addressed? It gives a better framework for dealing with the community plans, I think.
so that essentially, so those plans will come after.
Yes, I think an
Okay.
update of them would come after. That also, updating the community plans takes a considerable amount of community meetings. And so I think from a work program standpoint, we need to get through updating the rest of the comprehensive plan first and then begin to move through that process.
Commissioner Chris?
Thank you. Can you outline, just briefly, we could talk about it longer later if needed, but what's the coordination between the update of the MPO's long-range transportation plan and then the update of our comprehensive plan?
Sure. So as we've been talking at a number of the meetings, the data that underlines the long-range transportation plan is something we also utilize for the comprehensive plans. So where do we think the population and jobs are projected to go? And if there are significant changes in those projections, and that's something we need to circle back with the city's comp plans, which were updated in 2015, and maybe make some changes. Interestingly, when we went through It's Time Tampa Bay, we did not see a significant change in the direction that the community wanted to go, particularly in the cities. So I don't think, while I think there are specific areas where we're working with HART on our transit-oriented development policies as part of the review in their grant. So that might be a place where we need to look and refresh our policies. But I don't think we're looking at wholesale changes in any of the city's comp plans. I think the biggest opportunity is to begin to tie the county's comprehensive plan to that horizon date, or a longer horizon than 2025, and to begin to answer some of the questions in the unincorporated area about how much redevelopment are we going to look at in certain areas. I think that the city has a pretty clear vision. Each of the cities has a vision map. We've never had a vision map truly for the unincorporated area. There are a number of areas that are sort of identified as potential areas of growth outside the urban service area. Would love to get some consensus on whether or not that is something this Board of County Commissioners wants us to explore or not. Because if we're going to explore it down the road, I'd rather us plan for it instead of have what's happened in Brandon or other parts of the community happen where it's sort of, we've been reacting to the growth coming there. So I think that's the real opportunity, is to begin to tie the 2045 long-range transportation plan to the county's comprehensive plan, and then they're going to keep updating their long-range transportation plan every 5 years, and each time it's an opportunity for us to see, and that's why we partner with them on the outreach, is to see if there's a change in the vision or the direction that the community wants to go. Yeah. Yep. Sure.
Okay.
A couple other quick items. We have an upcoming information or info barbecue, Brown Bag Quarterly, is being hosted in part by former Planning Commissioner Bowen Arnold. We're taking a walking tour of the Pearl, and so everybody's meeting at Armature Works. You can get your brown bag there if you want. They've got some good options, and then we'll go take the walking tour there. That is on March 27th from 11:30 to 1. Also, I should mention that our Future Leaders in Planning application period is open, and that's for high school students to come join us for, I think it's 4 days now, to learn about planning throughout the community. They get to go on a lot of tours. Commissioner Thrower's daughter went through it 2 years ago, I guess?
2 years ago.
Yeah,
Really enjoyed it.
so if anyone has questions, he's got firsthand experience with it. Would welcome your help in spreading the word about that as well. And then in April, don't forget, we're going to have a paperless meeting, so you will not get your hard copy packets for those who still receive them. If you need any help with technology for that meeting, please let myself or Jason know. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Melissa? Thank you, Melissa. Next up is other business. First item, chair's business. I don't have anything, so we'll move on to old business. Any old business? Move to new business. Any new business? Tracy?
Commissioners, I'm going to circulate at this time the summary of the consensus index from your scores earlier on the review sheet for your executive director. We'll be discussing this in all probability next week. You can see how close or how far away the general consensus is. Your consensus might be from other commissioners. So for the record, it's coming around to you.
Any questions for Tracy on this, or? And this comes up next meeting, right, for action?
Well, there's really not any action. It's for everybody's information.
Information, okay. Okay, any questions for Tracy right now, or? Okay, we'll move on to any other new business. Any committee reports? Okay, Commissioner Dowdy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be very brief to talk about the Riverboard Technical Advisory Committee. The one item of note that I'd like to report on is we had a presentation on a I don't know how many of you are familiar with minimum flows and levels in the river, but there's a requirement below the dam for a particular flow rate in the Hillsborough River, and for since the adoption of that minimum flow, basically the city of Tampa has been pumping water over the dam in order to meet that requirement, among a number of other ways to meet it. But there's been a recent construction project where they actually constructed a gate in the dam itself, so they can operate that gate via SCADA, supervisory control and data acquisition, but they no longer need to operate and maintain a pumping system in order to provide the flow. So we had a presentation on the construction of that, and that it's now in operation. So
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Dowdy. Any other committee reports? Okay, no further committee reports. Any other items before we adjourn? The meeting's adjourned. We do have a public hearing at 5:30, so meeting's adjourned.